Okay, so you guys have just finished your first feature film. We have Pete, Mark, and Chris. T. Just wanted to ask you, a few questions about making your first feature in the filmmaking process. To start with, kind of question to all of you. So, how did you get to this point? Really, how did you get your start in film? And what brought you to Busking Turf Wars?
No one wants to speak in the first one.
I'll take this one first.
You take that one, go on then.
Well, actually, the first ever thing I did in film and TV was at the same time as Pete. We worked on a music video together for a local production company. And then for myself, it just kind of snowballed from there. I worked on short films, other music videos, eventually made my own first short film and started getting eventually paid jobs in film and TV, and then it kind of went from there. Like specifically Busking Turf Wars, I'll let these guys answer that because I came into that a little bit.
But I guess that kind of follows on from that because like I had never had any work in like film, like any paid work in film, but you guys both had. But like I think we all just wanted to make a movie, and I think for me, I just wanted to make a movie. And I think for you two, it came almost from the frustration of like doing something that you're not completely involved creatively in, and then thinking like, oh well, we can just make our own movie. Why don't we just like write a script, get the cameras that we have, get the people that we know, and just make a movie out of it. I think that was like the main starting point, wasn't it? That we could just make a feature.
Yeah,
why not? Yeah, like
me and Chris both went to film school, and I wasn't massively productive at film school. So then, as soon as I finished, I was moving to Canada in a couple of months' time. So we just decided to get active and try and shoot something before I went home.
That's like the beauty of having a deadline, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, okay, right, let's do this now. Pete goes away in like 2 weeks, right? We need to get this.
So in terms of how the actual the film specifically came about, these guys had the idea for a setting and a character. Honestly, not much beyond that at that stage. Like a loose script. And at that stage, I guess I'd had a little bit more experience in terms of like the production or logistics, and so they came to me, brought me on as a producer, and then I sourced various locations and crew, did some casting, created a schedule, and then left them to it.
That was like the real beginning, if you think about it. Like when us three came together was when stuff actually started like kickstarting, because me and Pete, we like worked creatively together, but then we met Mark and he was like, right, this. We're like, okay, let's do it. Like, I'm willing. Like
3 years later, we had a movie.
3 years later, look at me now, Mark.
So, jumping in to your first feature, do you guys still believe that there's power in short film? How come you went straight to a feature film?
We originally intended it to be like 3 10-minute webisodes or 15-minute webisodes, but foolishly we based the arc of that them 3 episodes. I just had we'd just been learning about the 3-act structure in university, and I just was looking at a graph and it said like, okay, you need this happen here, this happen here, this happen here. So we'd written a 3-act structure, so it's no surprise really that it ended up being a feature film, because we'd taken the structure of a feature film and tried to say, we're going to do it in 45 minutes. When we looked at the content, it was feature length. So
yeah,
it wasn't by design, but you could have predicted it happening.
I think especially once we'd shot the majority of principal photography, like what was in our original script, we realised, looking at an assembly in the edit, that it was feature material that we had. We'd created this character, we had a story that developed over a period of time rather than sort of in 5-minute bursts or whatever, and so it felt true to go with that rather than try and sculpt it into something else.
Yeah. It was just how it felt after the first edit, wasn't it? I remember Pete came back and he'd made an edit. I think it was about like 45 minutes or so at that time. Mm-hmm. And we were like, this. I remember us all watching it. I think it was it your house or Rob's house or anyway. But we watched it and we were like, this is a movie. Like we should make like this into a movie.
And even if it wasn't the finished article at the first edit stage. We needed to get some more GVs and maybe some tiny little scenes picked up. But given that we'd spent no money on it already, making the jump from 45 minutes to 75 minutes, there's no added cost. Really. It's like if you're making money for nothing, it's gonna cost nothing no matter how long it is, really.
And then, so I guess coming back to your question a little bit more specifically was. At that stage, once you've already produced, like he says, 45 minutes to an hour's worth of content, it felt far more interesting for the end product to be a feature rather than a short. Like, I do still think that shorts have a power and a utility, especially as a filmmaker who's learning your craft. But in terms of doing something with the end result, it was far more interesting for me as a producer to be able to try and market a feature rather than a short, which has a smaller shelf life.
I think the same goes for all of us as well in that term, doesn't it? Just
And sorry.
It was, I wouldn't say it's more exciting doing a feature, but it felt like, not taking anything away from shorts because they're brilliant to, like Mark says, to hone your craft and like get an idea and make it, but. I think the end game, everyone wants to make a feature, and it was just exciting to do something like that. I think.
How did you find the process of going from a 45 minutes of footage? I'm assuming this was more or less a full story you had in 45 minutes, fleshing it out to that 75-minute mark.
So that was like there was no introduction to the character, there was no introduction to the world of busking really. We had 45 minutes worth of like scenes, like establishing conflict, building up that conflict, resolving the conflict. But it was, if you were watching it, it was just like it was an assault. We as filmmakers like films like American Movie, for example, where you spend the time with the character and you get to know them, and you can dwell on human moments rather than. We need to get from A to B to C. So we had a lot of footage that was just viewing the character Stephen in his environment, and it wasn't really too much end, but there was lots of nice human moments in there. So
I think watching those moments helps you invest in the character, so that when he finds himself in conflict, you're rooting for him more because you spent the first 15 minutes of the movie getting to know him and with the world he inhabits and what makes him tick, that kind of stuff.
So where did Stephen Lockmore, your protagonist, where did that idea come from? Where did
that was like I think it was like
that was on me.
The name was mine. I think me and Pete had the original idea to have this busker, but then it was just kind of, I think that was just me doing voices and accents and whatever, and then ended up at Stephen. It was somewhere that was close enough to my own accent.
Well, you're not a talented guitarist. So
no, exactly. Which made it even funnier. So,
well, to explain a little bit about the character for viewers who maybe have seen the trailer but probably won't have seen the film yet. Stephen is a very salt-of-the-earth Yorkshireman who has more passion for his craft as a busker than he does talent. Yeah. So he brings a lot of heart to it, but not a lot of skill. And he's maybe a little bit deluded about his own
place in the world.
Yeah. And he's not David Brent and he's not Alan Partridge, but there is a commonality that these are people that are lovely and have a good heart, but can some people might find them annoying, and they maybe have delusions of grandeur, but they're not malicious people.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, back to what your question was, like, first of all, me and Pete just went out with a camera, and the idea was to just maybe get like a feeling of like what this character could be, and it was just kind of like what's the word? It was just kind of really organic. We just went out with a camera, and I started doing this character, and I took like you know, like Pete says, I took a lot of influence from like David Brent, Alan Partridge, these kind of like, not despicable, but these kind of characters that are kind of not quite what they perceive themselves to be, but you still root for them. And there was like, or like Basil Fawlty or something like that, and there was just like, I think there was like a power in that, and like it was funny, which was essentially what all I was going for.
And then certain things developed out of it when we started thinking about his look. We found a wig that suited Christy's hair colour, and it made him more of a rocker, and then from that maybe developed the denim cut off, which is very iconic for him in the film. And so it, like he says, organically developed into, he becomes a character that does this or that does that, or.
And I think when we were filming, a lot of the time people had come up to Stephen or Christy in character on the street and want to interact with them, and at that stage it was always more interesting on screen if he was nice to them, or at least not mean. So because that's more, if someone comes up and wants to speak to him and you are nasty to them, it brings a lot of negativity. So he likes interacting with the public.
And so through that necessity, it became a character trait as well. It became somebody that
like a man of the people.
Yeah, does speaks to Joe Public here, there, and everywhere, and interacts, and I think one thing probably led to the other, which then influenced the other, and so on and so forth.
As obviously playing the lead character in your movie, how do you find almost communicating for performance, and also generally working with other actors? How do you work to get best performances? How do you like to communicate with actors, I suppose?
I suppose like all the dialogue was improvised,
right?
So that obviously had a big influence. We knew what Stephen's character was, and working backwards, we knew what the antagonist, Paul Adrian, should be like. He's the anti-Stephen. He has a direct line to the things that would wind Stephen up. So we'd just run the scene and find a lot of moments that worked, and try and tweak elements and just keep running the scene. And it was usually on the third or fourth time that we'd essentially have a script that we'd know exactly the beat for beat and even line for line that works. Me being a first-time director, and we knew that the actors were going to be not professional actors, so I think taking a script and making that feel real is a lot of a taller order than trying to find people who can improvise, and which is always going to feel more real. So we thought it would be easier to find people who were good improvisers rather than good actors, if that makes sense.
Yeah. A mix of the two.
Yeah. Calling back to what you're saying about production value, because I personally thought you did really well there.
Thanks.
How did you find a way to how did you find ways to add production value to a low budget film?
So I think first and foremost the actual format of the film is documentary style, and so it was always going to be in our favour to have essentially less production value. It delivers that idea of a documentary more so if it's more forgiving, let's say, if the shots are a little bit wobbly or sometimes a little bit soft or the sound's not always crisp. It makes you feel when you're watching it that this is real. I believe that this has actually happened, and so that was always
you can hide behind like that style as well, and not get hung up about production value, because you can hide behind the documentary style as a way to all your insecurities as filmmakers, like, oh, we can't do this well, we can't do this well. If you do it in a documentary style, we can we can kind of take cover, and anything that we get wrong or don't get right on the day would be similar to a documentary. How would they have to deal with it?
I think the main thing that brought production value was the range of locations, because every new place we take you to makes the film more credible.
Yeah.
Like, oh, they weren't just on the streets with cameras, they were in a guitar shop, they were in a supermarket, they were in a gig venue. And we sourced all them locations for free. And maybe even on a script level, I was writing in locations because I knew that that's what would take this from a sketch show or from a bit of fun to the real deal.
Yeah.
And then I guess, not to say that this was by design, I'd love to say it was, but the world that our central character inhabits is the street, and so just having him in his natural habitat instantly puts him surrounded by all these real actual shops and people that are walking past in the background of shop. And so let's say if this was a bigger production where this was all strictly by design, there'd have been 100 extras there to dress into these scenes to give it that same verite or whatever. But we
already had them.
It was we had a permission to shoot on the streets, and so that gave us all of these great backdrops of the city and people walking past in the background. It was all sort of accidental production value. I don't want to say accidental.
The biggest production expense would just be costume, I guess, for the two leads, and making sure that
a wig.
They had alternate for every scene they were in. They had alternate clothing, and that feels really not very significant at all. But subconsciously, it adds to the credibility. Oh, okay, they don't just have this one set of clothing that he wears whenever they go out filming.
Yeah.
He's got multiple band T-shirts. The other character, Paul, has got like multiple different hats, different scarves and shirts and stuff. And it was all cheap charity shop stuff, but it adds to the credibility.
Yeah.
You say as well, how do you find getting your sound right in the middle of a busy city as well? How did you go around that?
The first thing would be a massive plug and a thank you for our sound recordist and sound mixer, a guy called Rob Wingfield, who Pete had worked with previously, but before we had our first production meeting for Busking Turf Wars, I'd never met him, but I worked with him time and time again. He was super professional, really friendly, but also like totally on it with what he was doing. Even in a very kind of casual, relaxed way, he would always get the best sound and like professional to a T. So that was the jumping off point. The majority of the time we were booming, but there were certain scenes, I think, where we wanted the freedom to hang back a little bit.
No, it's all
We didn't have a wire on.
We had one, but in the mix, there's no
right, okay.
EA told me that. So yeah, all boomed.
Even better.
Yeah.
I think that's why he will have told me, because it's
He wanted to say, it's all boomed,
And ironically, there's a handful of lines of dialogue in the film that are ADR, but they were all interiors, weren't they? Like the supermarket. Basically, the majority of the ADR that we had to do, which was minimal, was interiors. So everything that was shot outside was captured live on the day.
And this having not professional, but well, I guess he is professional. Having a sound mix makes the biggest difference out of any of the elements of post production, I think. So yeah, don't if you're an editor, don't try and just do that. Think, I can probably do this myself.
That is like, I mean, even when I went to film school, that's the biggest lesson Like I don't know if it's the same for everyone else, but I don't think anyone really realizes how important sound is until you try and make a movie, or until someone says like it's so important.
Yeah.
Until you make your first movie and you're like, why is this so like stale and flat?
Yeah.
It's like because the sound's awful. You haven't got it, and that, especially with what we were doing, filming on the streets with unpredictable locations, with hundreds of lead shoppers on the streets. You know, I was like, okay, right, we need to get this perfect.
There was a couple of moments in the film where we got lucky with sound that happened naturally on the street, not at all by design. Maybe an alarm went off on the high street, or
But that added to the
drama.
Sort of added something to it. Again, maybe fed into that realism of, oh, okay, this isn't happening in a studio somewhere. This is actually happening out on the street. And obviously, if that had have conflicted with a powerful line of dialogue at the wrong moment, it wouldn't have worked for us. But I guess 90% skill and professionalism, 10% luck.
Yeah, actually leads quite well into my next question, which is what should you never cheap out on a low budget film?
Sound.
Yeah.
Exactly. Sound, yeah.
I mean, what else?
I mean, even you know, like it was documentary. We managed to food, another thing. If you can feed people, then most of the people will be happy. We spent a lot on meal deals.
Yeah.
Spent a lot on meal deals. Like if people are getting fed, they will do more than you think. Trust me.
We. I guess 70-80% of the film was shot exterior, street, so we didn't have the option to be making casseroles and hot pots and bakes and stuff like that. So the majority of what we fed our crew was
Meal
deals. But you buy people 2 meal deals, it's still only £5-6,
Exactly.
and they're not hungry. They're sort of working on a nice, comfortable, full stomach, and they've got a spare bag of crisps to go later. So
I don't know if it necessarily applies to cheaping out, but with different elements of the film, don't settle for something you're not happy with, whether if it's a sound cue or an editorial decision or something. There's so many occasions where I've been happy with something in the edit, and these guys have been like, no, it's not quite right, and then we've gone back to it and it's become so much better, or someone's given us a piece of music and it's good and they're doing it for free, but if you can ask for that one more revision, because it will if you when you get what you want, it pays off massively.
And providing that you're not being unreasonable with those in that example, if you go back to somebody and explain why you want a particular change and you want it developing in a certain way and stuff, I think they respect your attention to detail, and then when it's recognised as successful and stuff like that, it pays off. We were talking about Rob before, the sound designer. There's a couple of times that he's worked through an incredible edit, and we've come in and nitpicked about little things and been very conscious about it. Almost, I know that you're helping us out here, but can we just change this, and this? And he's always thankful. He
because
says,
it is his job to look at the whole thing and do his best and get as close as he can. But when it's watching it back, having had no part of it, that you see the tiny things that you'd like to change.
So wherever you can, don't compromise. Understanding that compromise is essential in any film that you make. You're very scarcely going to have free reign to do whatever you want. But with that in mind, wherever you can make the changes to make the film that you want to make them.
I think that the parts of the film that we may be unhappy with, it's always been times when we've exhausted every option and we've got the best that we possibly can get, and there's nothing else to try.
Yeah, I think in terms as well of price, money in a film, and like saving money. We made something that we knew we could do. Like we knew every location in Leeds because we're from there. My hometown's Wakefield, but spent a lot of time in Leeds, and then we made it with our friends as well. We made it with people we've worked with before who we knew would be like willing to kind of jump in on us with this thing.
Gives a little bit of leeway. Where
Yeah, it gives you a little bit of leeway when you're saying, "Oh, come on, man, can you just do this one more day? Come on, bro, like, it's just one. All right, I'll do it." Yeah. Do something and take advantage of your friends.
What Christy means to say.
What I mean to say is.
So next question, I'm moving on a bit. How do you feel about film in this new golden age of TV? Do you feel like film is taking a backseat?
Me personally, like I think you have to almost like succumb, because in the age of TV, you've got things that are doing amazingly and that I wouldn't even dare kind of put down or say like, oh, this is ruining. True Detective, things like that. The Jinx, which we were talking about before, like great TV. I don't think movie will ever take a back seat. I think maybe the way that we consume it will change. But even look at Netflix as well, which has got now, I think it's just had its first original feature, like Beast of No Nation. I think maybe the way that we, like I said, consume film will change, but I don't think it'll ever take a back seat. And I think that quality TV programming is fantastic in its own right as well.
I think they can do. I think like that. There is a big difference between cinema and TV, and I see the new, really successful TV shows that are coming out not in competition. I almost see them as a completely different animal. It's just that it's a completely different form.
Like a new art form,
like
separate.
It Follows, for example, it wouldn't work as a 10-episode TV show, but as an hour and a half movie, it's incredible. And I think the cinema is always where you're going to see the most, see the director's hand, I guess. It's the place where you're going to, the author is going to have the biggest stamp on it, I feel. In TV, it seems like it's more of a...
It's a writer's medium.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you have any, inclination to move to TV, or do you feel like your home is in film?
I don't have a massive draw to TV in terms of like a strong will to direct anything there or write anything there. I've got a couple of ideas that I'll maybe develop at some stage in my life, but I think for now, the kind of stories that I'm interested in telling are a little bit more... you've got this particular window of time to tell a story from A to B, and you don't have 10 hours worth of episodes to develop that over. It's get in, tell a story and get out, and that's the form that I'm more interested in at the minute.
I think a lot of the times now, like you said, there's this like golden age of TV, but I don't think the two have to be like mutually exclusive to each other. I think that you can like work in and out. It's like, I think it was David Lynch who did Twin Peaks, right? And that was like a massive film director coming and doing, that was like the start of it. And now you've got film directors who are doing TV, and I think they're just finding another outlet, like Scorsese and Boardwalk Empire. I think Michael Mann did one as well, didn't he? It was Luck or something with Dustin Hoffman. I don't think it'd do very well, but... Sorry, Dustin. I don't think the two have to be like mutually exclusive. I think if you have a good idea, then you have a good idea, and the way you present that, it's either like, I can't tell this story in 2.5 hours, but I could tell it in 10. Or I can't tell, this story's not going to last 10 hours, I can tell it in an hour and a half. Like, it'd make a great little movie. I think if you think of both of these as like tools, as one's hammer and one's a nail, you use them.
It's great.
You use them together.
Yeah. One's a hammer and one's a saw. Hammer and a saw. There you go.
Please
And we want to see
Next
where this
question.
goes. Next question.
Pete, did you have anything to say on that?
I don't know if it really links in, but I feel like there's some themes that work better in TV. I don't know why, but I always think that betrayal never works as well in film as it does in TV, because you don't have you can build what you think to be a relationship, and then when the character betrays someone, you're like, oh no. But in a movie, it's like you've at best had an hour and a half for that betrayal to pay off. I don't know.
Especially with the TV as well, if you take like Netflix out of the equation, but you usually got like a week to think about it.
Yeah.
So it's like rather than like 5 hours you've spent with these people, you spent 5 weeks, and every time you're talking about it all week, like that guy, like I don't know if he's going to be nice or, and by the time you get to the 5th week and there's the betrayal, you're like, no way, no.
So going back to what you're saying about Netflix, actually. Again, how do you feel on-demand services that have affected filmmaking, and specifically with regards to Busking Turf Wars, how are you guys going about distribution with your movie?
We're sort of exploring more of the online world, not necessarily because of any benefits or conflicts with anything like Netflix. I guess just because, and I don't think I'm underselling the film here, but by appreciating the scale of the film that we've made, we had a really, really great screening here where we managed to fill the cinema and stuff. We're not going to do that across the country, sort of thing. I think we'll definitely we've found an audience already, and we intend to tap into and exploit that audience. But
like we exploit our friends.
Yeah. But I think some products are suited to a smaller market, and so the kind of distribution that we're looking at is various online models where we can build an audience without needing to plaster advertising on the side of buses or pay for TV slots and stuff like that. Yeah.
Would you eventually, if you could, would you like to be in cinemas, or would you?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. It's not because we don't want to be screening all over the place. And if we can get to that stage, I don't feel like, I don't want you guys to think I'm sort of.
No, absolutely not. No. And I think the way that Mark has kind of, decided to distribute the movie and sell it reflects the film itself and how we made it. It was like completely DIY, and was done by 3 people and a few friends. And like the distribution, and it kind of reflects that, taking our movie and doing it ourselves, and like trying to put it out through. I know like Mark's got loads of plans.
I think the easier
talk too much. Talk too much about that.
The easier you make it for someone to get their hands on your content, it's never gonna hurt. Hurt you.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And so we do have other screenings in the pipeline for the film. Not just sort of regular pay-per-view and go to the movies events, but we're in the middle of a festival run as well that's going to be going for the next year or so, and so the film will be screening in cinemas, and that's going to be a treat whenever we get that opportunity to go see it there again. But in terms of the main outlet for consumers to get hold of a copy and be able to watch it themselves, we're looking at self-distribution online mostly.
Okay. Well, that's the end of my questions with regards to Busking Turf Wars and filmmaking. Got one final question for you, which is essentially, if you could only watch one director's movies for the rest of your life, who would it be?
Ooh, that's harsh.
Mm.
That is a harsh one.
I want to go for the obvious for me, but
no one wants to talk for
me. I was gonna say
one director.
One director.
I was gonna say David Fincher. However, I was just saying to Mark the other day how I never include Danny Boyle in when I'm talking about my favourite directors, and I think it's because his work is he does something in this genre, something in that genre, and you never really see them as a body of work.
That's a good point.
But it's a great body of work, so I'm going to say Danny Boyle.
I'd probably say, for a similar sort of reason, because usually they have drama and comedy, but also like a great artistic like style and things. say Paul Thomas Anderson, I think. It's like,
That's a good one.
That's a good one, isn't it? I thought so.
Oh well, yeah. I was going to say, so like Terrence Malick's got 3 movies to go off. Just seeing 3 films on a hard cycle.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. It sounds a bit cheesy, but I'm a big Christopher Nolan fan.
Yeah.
I think Inception was one of my favourite movies, and I could probably watch his films for quite a bit. Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. Anything else you'd like to say about your movie? Any final plugs before we shut off?
BuskingTurfWars.com. Eventually you'll be able to purchase and rent the movie there. Check out our Facebook page, all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Stephen Lockmore's Twitter, Busking Turf Wars Twitter, at Busker_Steve. I think.
Yeah. But yeah, basically, just if you're interested in what you've seen, check out the movie. Like, it's a good laugh.
You'll love it, honestly.
It is a good laugh.
You will love it, I swear down. Please watch it.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Nice.
It's a bit where we stand up and like take our radio mics off.